Hello, everybody. I wanted just to pause here again before we go into the next section of the collapse because it gets a bit dark from here on in. And I wanted to pause just to talk about the one affect that makes all of this possible. And it's the sort of dichotomous truth of narcissistic abuse. And it's really key that we get our heads around this because we are perpetually self inflicting somebody else's wound onto a self concept that we have co constructed within a shared fantasy. I want you to think about that for a little while. What it is you're actually doing, what it is you're actually torturing in your mind. This co constructed self concept that was born out of your mute child, out of your hope, out of your longing. And out of that mute child, then our Redeemer ego rose. And it sought another person. It saw in another person what it needed. Because everything was so twisted in the relationship, the idealization brought all this animated libidinal pull to it. And this libidinal pull, this longing, all the grandiosity, all the supply that was coming in from the relationship, animated this false self, this pseudo false self that we built to survive the relationship. And it was this false self that was brought down. It was this self concept that's been shattered in the relationship by the discard that we have been perpetually self punishing, believing it is us. And I want to bring clarity to why this affect is so destructive, but it's also going to be the very thing that's going to bring you back to yourself. The engine of everything. What makes narcissistic abuse so enduring, so psychologically ruinous, and yet so difficult to escape? It is not the narcissist's charm, manipulation, or cruelty. It is not merely trauma bonding or idealization. It is one affect, hope, that sustains the entire structure. Hope is the libidinal current that animates the shared fantasy. It is the symbolic fuel that keeps the survivor invested, longing, performing, and enduring. But here's the paradox: hope is the beginning of the collapse and the key to recovery. This talk explores the road of hope as both saviour and saboteur. Fairbairn proposed that we do not seek pleasure, as Freud believed. We seek objects, people, relationships. But when those objects, particularly the parental figures of childhood, fail us, we split them into an exciting object, the idealized, promising, intermittently loving parent, the rejecting object, the shaming, abandoning, or engulfing parent. To preserve the attachment and therefore the self, the psyche internalizes both. But what keeps this split system running? Why would a child cling to a rejecting object? Because the exciting object might still come back. The child hopes, and hope keeps the internal theatre alive. Hope fuels the libidinal ego, which seeks reunion. Hope silences the central ego, which might otherwise accept the loss. In this model, hope is the affective currency that allows symbolic survival in the aftermath of relational failure. Mirrored psychic inversion theory maps the survivor's collapse through a series of symbolic ego states. The Redeemer is one such part, born from the mute child's trauma, animated by the desperate longing to restore love and meaning. The Redeemer's motto, if I suffer just enough, they will return. This is hope distorted, not as optimism, but as affective compulsion, The survivor stays, performs, forgives, and self erases, all in the belief that their love will eventually transform the narcissist. Hope now fuels spiritual idealization. They are broken, not bad. Fantasy logic. This pain must mean something. Reverse agency. My role is to redeem them. The Redeemer is not deluded. It is profoundly human. It is the psyche's theological effort to reclaim symbolic coherence in the face of annihilation. But this hope no longer serves the self, it serves the fantasy. Hope becomes the ritual of self sacrifice. Eventually, the shared fantasy collapses, the narcissist discards, or the survivor flees, or both implode simultaneously. And then comes the pain, not just grief, not just trauma, but hope betrayed. I thought I was helping. I thought this meant something. I believed we had a bond. This is the symbolic annihilation that M. Pitt names as reflexive mirrored psychic inversion. The survivor realizes they were never truly seen, only mirrored, extracted, and discarded. The Redeemer dies. The mute child screams. The false self collapses. The enforcer punishes. The loop spirals. And at the core of it is shattered hope. The dual nature of hope, the gift and the curse. The hope as a curse, it keeps you in the loop, fuels the Redeemer fantasy, makes abuse feel redemptive, keeps the object alive. Hope as a gift animates the longing for truth, fuels the search for meaning, makes healing feel possible, keeps the self alive. Hope is not the problem, but distorted hope, co opted by fantasy trauma and narcissistic interjects. Oh, yeah, it is. The goal of recovery is not to kill hope, it is to rescue it. In Input, the final ego state, the true self does not loop. It names, it speaks plainly, it sees what happened, and yet it still hopes, not for reunion, not for redemption, but for coherence, for healing, for love that is real. The survivor begins to hope in the right direction, not towards the narcissist, but towards the self. This is the vertical hope Empit speaks of, no longer trapped in the horizontal axis of fantasy, but anchored in reality, in witnessing, in symbolic authorship. One affect makes this all possible. Narcissistic abuse is not held together by cruelty, but by hope. It is the hope of a child longing for a different parent, the hope of a partner believing they were chosen for their soul, the hope of a redeemer trying to save a love that never truly existed. This is not stupidity. It is not weakness. It is the most human force in the world. The refusal to stop believing in love. But hope must evolve. It must move from delusion to clarity, from fantasy to reality, from object seeking to self restoration. Because in the end, it is not hope that betrays us, it is what we are taught to hope for. Peace out. Loads of love.